Here's Rob Dibble.
All right, talking about the NFL draft. As I said in the first hour, 17 for defense, 15 for offense, but a lot of big men. A lot of linemen, offense and defense. And you love the big sloppies, and a lot of these teams are probably very excited about the prospects of getting a 22 or 23-year-old young man that can help solidify those lines. Talk about some of these big men that were drafted and what they need to expect going into camp.
Well, it's definitely a higher IQ in what they're stepping into. The playbook has expanded by about 5, depending on where you're coming from. Some colleges run some pretty intricate stuff.
Right.
But
you were just saying Iowa. How does Iowa have all these first-round picks and they stink?
Well, they specialize in running the football and playing defense. And they have produced some great linebackers over the years, some great offensive linemen over the years. Maybe they start looking at like receivers and quarterbacks and DBs and stuff to round out their whole football team. But there's some really good offensive tackles that got drafted last night and the ones that are still on the board. I'm a big Paris Johnson Jr. fan out of Ohio State. I always am buyer beware out of Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, and a couple others, because I always say this: it's like playing on an all-star team. When you're blocking for the 5-star running back, and the next 4 or 5 guys or next 4 guys next to you on the offensive line are also 5-star offensive linemen, life's a lot easier than if you're the only dude on the offensive line. That's why I'm big on the Northwestern kid that the Titans got, Peter Skoronski. I mean, this is the reason that they're successful on offense, is having that extra protection. And they're showing a lot of highlights of this guy pulling and being a lead blocker from that tackle spot. Now, just because they have OT next to their name doesn't mean they're going to be a tackle. They could float into one of those guard roles. There's been a lot of people that have done that over the years that started as offensive tackles, left tackles for their college football team because they were the man. And then they get to the NFL and they're just like everybody else, and they fit into a guard a little bit better in this league. But the best thing to do is to have a guy that can play all 3: center, guard, offensive tackle. That way you can piece things together. Darnell Wright went 10th to the Chicago Bears. That's huge for them, getting some protection for Justin Fields. I think the Bears last night told everybody without saying it that Justin Fields is our quarterback.
Right.
And we're going to move on and fill up the rest of the spots that we need to fill up. Roderick Jones from Georgia. The Steelers trading with the Patriots. Does that happen a lot? I feel like that never really happens. The Patriots and the Steelers, I thought, hated each other.
It depends on what the Steelers gave up, and they liked what they got in return. And Bill Belichick's always wheeling and dealing. He's like, I know we could get a second or a third rounder that's going to be better than anybody else's, and we're going to be able to pencil them in. And it's the next man up mentality. That's what makes the Patriots so great. They've always done well in the draft in the later rounds.
Yeah, I think that Belichick wanted a corner and knew that his friends down in New York, the Jets, have Sauce Gardner, and there's no way they were going to draft a number 1 corner in the first round. So he was cool with giving his friends at the Steelers that Broderick Jones pick, because perhaps that's where the Jets wanted to go instead of getting Will McDonald IV out of Iowa State. Now, did Belichick want Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon, or did he want Emmanuel Forbes, who went right before him to the Washington Commanders out of Mississippi State? Both of them corners. I think it's splitting hairs, but I do like Christian Gonzalez a little bit better. For you Patriot fans, I like 6'1", 197. I think his wingspan is really great. Emmanuel Forbes is also 6'1", but clocks in at 166. I just like the 30 pounds of extra beef there on Christian Gonzalez, and he's one of the fastest corners as well at that size. So I think the Patriots did well, even though they didn't get that offensive lineman that they ended up giving to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kalijah Kancey going to Tampa Bay out of Pittsburgh. I think not a lot of people are talking about this guy, but he could be very significant on Tampa Bay's defensive front, and that could make them very successful next year. He's a big sloppy to watch as a rookie, getting in there right away, being a first-rounder that they put in on defense to start right away. Jacksonville Jaguars had an Oklahoma offensive tackle. I'd love to see that because that means that they're taking Trevor Lawrence very serious there, and they want to protect him for years to come.
Bodyguard.
And then Clemson finished out the day with two defensive linemen that get picked up back-to-back. 29th, Miles Murphy going to Cincinnati. Your Bengals, and that defense is underrated, and they got better. I think their offense is set, dude.
Well,
I think their offense is set.
Very impressive colleges. There were 3 first-rounders from Alabama, 3 first-rounders from Georgia, 3 from Ohio State. This just shows you who the best schools are. Clemson, like you said, they had 2. Some other schools had 2 as well. But, Alabama, Georgia, always seen. Remember that one year, I think it was LSU had like 14 first-round picks? It was unbelievable. How many first rounders that they had off that national championship team. But this is what Alabama does every year. This is what Georgia and some of these schools do every year. They not only win championships or compete for championships for the national title, but they put a lot of bodies in the NFL.
I believe that this is really what's helped UConn's defensive line in the last couple of years, and seeing a Travis Jones get drafted and offensive line. Travis Jones, the defensive tackle out of New Haven. What about Byron? But that was a while back.
Right.
I think Byron Jones and Anthony Edwards are just examples of how you can turn the combine into a draft pick, and then turn that draft pick into a great career.
It's a showcase.
But the recruiting that is this week for college football, like when it's all said and done, we're going to get stats about the SEC, and I'm betting SEC's got about 25% of the draft, and that's huge on recruiting, man. I always tell you this story about knowing some kids that got recruited by Saban, and when they go to Alabama for their visit, they don't talk football. Saban brings them in their office, and he's got a 3-ring binder. He's got all these pictures laminated. One picture is what Eddie Lacy's house looks like. Another picture is what Trent Richardson's house looks like. Another picture is what Derrick Henry's house looks like.
Right.
So, like, you want to play at Alabama, this is what could happen in 4 years.
Right.
We can talk X's and O's. We can talk your education. We can talk all that stuff later. But just this weekend for a lot of these schools, a lot of these conferences, huge in recruiting to see where the best place to go to maximize your potential in your future.
All right, so second round starts with the Steelers, Cardinals, Lions, Colts, Chargers. I mean, any of these teams need a quarterback? Anybody looking at Will Levis next available?
Maybe the Lions. Maybe they have a backup for Goff. Maybe it comes up after that. You got the Rams after.
You got Herbert in San Diego.
Yeah, that's not going to change.
Yeah, Kyler Murray.
I'm honestly looking at the Tennessee Titans. I think the Tennessee Titans are not sold on Malik Lewis. Tannehill's up in the air. I think if they got a Will Levis, that would be big for them. And it's honestly a good spot for Will. If they add some receivers, it'd be even better. But I would love to start my NFL career handing the ball off to Derrick Henry.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'll learn by fire that way. Maybe 20 passes a game instead of 45, and me running for my life and getting smoked like Justin Fields has spent his first couple of years.
And I'm with you with this Hendon Hooker, man. He, to me, knowing, okay, so he blows out his knee, but, 2 years from now, this guy could be the best quarterback that was in this class.
So Hendon Hooker was on Alabama and was looking like he was going to be the next starting quarterback.
6'3", 220, bro.
So blows out his knee.
A body, man.
And then I forget our coach in Tennessee who was at UCF and we're friends with. I forget all these names in my head, but he took him over and turned him into a really great quarterback. Heupel.
That's right, Josh Heupel.
Now, they've had great receivers. There's going to be a couple receivers from Tennessee that get drafted. I already mentioned Darnell Wright, who got drafted by the Chicago Bears. So they had a good team as well this year for Hendon Hooker, but he really put it all together. If Hendon Hooker's not on the Volunteers this year, Tennessee is not as successful as what they have been. I think he's a gamer. He's won big games. He's played in some big games. And 3 years ago, he was one of the top quarterbacks, if not like top 3 quarterbacks in his class.
Yeah.
So we'll see where he goes. I think even if he gets a backup role, that he's going to be competing for that job eventually.
I think so, too. I think it's cool.
A lot of good specialists, man. There's still some good running backs. There's some great receivers out there. The tight end position has not been
Michael
tapped.
Mayer right there. Second best available behind Levis. Tight end, Notre Dame.
Oh, yes. Is it Meyer or Mayer? Mayer, like John Mayer. He's a beast. I like him because he's also got blocking skills. He's not just a receiver / tight end. I think Dalton Kincaid's going to be really good that the Buffalo Bills drafted. Don't know if he's going to stay a Buffalo Bill because that's very crowded out there. Not enough ball to go around on that offense.
6'5", 250. That's
Mayer?
a hell of a size for tight end.
And he can catch.
Good hands, right?
God doesn't make enough tight ends.
God, no.
There's not. And the other thing about tight ends, man, they're the best dudes. They really are. They're funny and they're protective. They
Most big people are because you're big and nobody's going to mess with you.
But then, like,
so you could be funny until you're not.
Offensive linemen can't catch, so like they're a step below a tight end. I think the world
for
of
the
them.
running backs, man. Not enough of them get drafted early.
So Gibbs, Jahmyr Gibbs gets picked up by the Detroit Lions, who there I have Jamal Williams, and they've set themselves up to be an offensive juggernaut of sorts. But it looks like Campbell wants to run the football. I'm a fan of this Gibbs. I don't think he's a bruiser. I think just because he plays on Alabama, people think that. He is a speed demon. But it's a reach, Dibbs. I mean, in 3 years, you're going to have to pay these guys.
Right.
And
Just when they're starting to decline.
And no offense to them all, but they all think that they're worth way more than they actually are. And they're going to fight you tooth and nail. They're going to hold out. They're going to be a nuisance trying to get their money. And it's really tough because you think, man, he scored all the touchdowns. But you fail to realize there's so many running backs that you can get off the trash pile by the end of the season that are still going to be viable. But Gibbs is a good one. Obviously, Bijan Robinson was a Heisman Trophy candidate all year. We're big fans of that tank. But there's still a
Tank Bigsby.
Speaking of tanks, there's still a lot of them out there that are very viable, including Auburn's Tank Bigsby.
What a name.
I think that's a perfect NFL name. Perfect NFL name. But you never know with some of these guys from lesser than schools.
Right.
Again,
Who are you playing against in college?
and who's up front blocking for you?
Right.
Like, I'm looking at this Dwayne McBride from UAB. This dude has clawed his way to the draft. He is 9th best available right now in the running back. He's not going to get drafted until probably 6, 7. If he gets drafted higher than that, great. But he could turn out to be a player. And if not a running back, a guy that you bring in on third downs that can catch some balls as well out of the slot. I just think there's a lot of players still. Remember Sean Tucker from Syracuse was supposed to be a Heisman Trophy candidate? I guess until it came to, well, no, they did beat us. Did they beat us? Did we beat Syracuse? UConn. We beat Syracuse. No, we lost
No,
them?
I think we lost to Syracuse.
Fresno was after that,
Fresno
right?
was
Yes,
after
I hated that game. That's right. That was a bad game. We won't talk about
Tucker
it.
is 16 on the running back board.
Exactly. I know. I think that's because of his weight. He's a little small.
207, 5'9". That is small.
You're going to take a beating in that league, man.
Yeah, you are.
You're going to take a beating in that league. But, yeah, there's a lot of teams that will need a running back, but I just feel like you could wait. You could have probably waited for Gibbs if you're the Detroit Lions. You probably could have waited for Bijan Robinson and maybe traded down if you're the Falcons. But if they're the guys that you want and you want to play them right away, and you think within 2 years you can turn it around to a Super Bowl, and that's the missing piece, then go do it. Go do it. But it's going to be a problem in 3 years with all these guys if they are successful. And if they are not, then it feels like you wasted a number 1 pick.
What do you think about this Jonathan Mingo, who's still out there,
Love
wide
him.
receiver from
Love
Ole
him.
Miss?
Yes.
Tall, 2'6", 220.
Any relation to Barkevius Mingo?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Mingos?
I would love for it to actually be true. Ole Miss has produced a lot of great wide receivers in the last 20 years. And I'm somewhat of a fan of Lane Kiffin offenses, and I think that quarterbacks and receivers come out of those offenses a lot smarter than when they were into those offenses. But Mingo's a go-get-it kind of guy. He has got speed all over the place. Plus, he is a down-the-field blocker, which I know people don't care about in the draft, but it's
big in the NFL.
It's an
Need guys
underrated
like that.
thing in the NFL. I'm also huge on Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma. He is still available.
What about Cedric Tillman, 6'3", 220 out of Tennessee?
The size.
Yep.
The size. Just 6'3", a guy that goes over the middle. Now, him and Jalen Hyatt kind of played off of each other, and again, they have Hendon Hooker throwing him the ball. I just think that Heupel offense made everybody better. And those guys in that Tennessee offense are high IQ football players.
Can't teach big, though.
You can't teach big. There's a lot of guys, though, that are somewhat under the radar. I know I've been talking your guys' head off about Iowa State's Xavier Hutchinson. He is still available and probably get picked up tomorrow. A.T. Perry out of Wake Forest, too, is kind of an unsung guy out of the ACC that's not getting a lot of talk.
6'4". Love it.
Can't teach 6'4", man.
Can't teach 6'4".
Well, so there's some talent on the offensive side still to draft tonight and tomorrow.
All right, who you got is early because 5 o'clock, we still got more tickets to give away for the Wolfpack and ZZ Top. Name That Wolf coming up at 5 o'clock, so keep the number handy, 860-522-3776. But who you got is next on the Rob Dibble Show. It's Happy Friday, everybody. Ben, Rob, Kurt, John, everybody here at the Rob Dibble Show. We're happy it's Friday, so you get to relax for a couple days. We'll be right back.